I'm going to go out of my way for once and talk about something positive. I'm going to talk about a game you really, really like. I'm going to talk about Bloodborne and why it's amazing. Bloodborne theme song fades out, Bloodborne theme song fades in. Okay, to start off, we're going to have to establish our baseline, aren't we? Bloodborne's amazing, but the Souls series has always been good. Let's start by talking in basic terms about the core gameplay. They are, when you boil it down, basically action games attempting to recreate the same sort of stuffers like Dungeons and Dragons were designed to simulate. Adventures in magical lands with dungeons and/or dragons. They control in a vaguely similar way to other third-person action games like Devil May Cry, or Drakengard, or Dynasty Warriors, or even The Legend of Zelda. However, despite superficial resemblance, in practice, the games operate very differently from those. All the games I just mentioned here have a focus on instantaneousness, fluidity, and flow or speed. You press the button, and the character is immediately doing the thing. Dant is doing the stabby or the jumpy, or the flippy as soon as you press the button, commanding him to do it. He's such a good boy. In lots of these games, you can even cancel a move you're currently doing into another move. So if you realized you actually pressed the wrong button, you can get away with pressing the right one, and Dant cleans up after your mistakes for you. It's like McDonald's or casual sex. It's fine. You know, like it, although. But outside of higher difficulties, there's this sense of never really earning anything to me. I hit the relevant button based on when it was clearly telegraphing that I should be doing it, and then it happened instantly. It's missing something. The Souls games are theoretically similar, but choose such a different core design philosophy that I bet some of you winced when I compared them to character action games the way I just did. When you press the attack button in a Souls game, you've not just committed to an attack. You've committed to the long, arduous process of signing the proper paperwork to get planning permission to start to swing your sword. You don't immediately see dividends on the button you pressed. You have to wait for the attack to go off. On top of that, instead of attacking and moving being an infinite resource, you have a limited amount of stamina you can invest at any given time. So you can't rely on mashing the attack and dodge buttons to get by. And then, if you press the wrong button, you can't hit undo. You can't cancel out of an attack into the roll you should have done. You get stabbed instead. This creates an immediate friction between you and what you want to achieve. You can't just hit the button when you see an opening, or dance around and wait until one gets handed to you. You have to learn to prepare and observe the timing of your enemy, and be able to know when to act instead of simply acting, or use your limited stamina resource to create an opening by dodging an early attack. This is the main reason why the series has always been a little bit divisive. Its deliberateness puts it directly at odds with almost every other game of its type, which strive to make actions as quick as possible and give the player tons of control and freedom. However, it's for the same reason that you might find a Souls game more rewarding, because there's a genuine sense of having earned a victory once you get it. The tools you're given for victory are more limited. You're never going to feel like a badass who can flip all over the place or dodge infinitely anytime they need to. But this makes winning with those more limited tools more satisfying and feel like a real achievement. There is something on a core level fun about this kind of setup that you don't really get in many other types of game. It also creates a much deeper appreciation for subtlety. Each Devil May Cry game, for example, has a huge array of monsters with ridiculously cool-looking moves and stuff, but there are so many on screen at a time, and it's so easy to actually deal with them that there's less of a wait to an encounter. The game only starts feeling fun on really high difficulties when only a couple of those attacks would kill you, and you suddenly have to take everything really seriously. Meanwhile, just this one guy in Demon's Souls could, and generally usually does, kill me. I've had to put more thought into dealing with the red-eyed knights in Demon's Souls, or the black knights in Dark Souls, than basically every enemy in a Devil May Cry game put together. It's just that much more engaging. That much more engaging. It makes every single encounter feel dense with prediction, timing, planning, and execution. You have to almost consider the psychology of your opponent to know the right time before you get there, and wait out the time it takes to do the thing you wanted to do, until you finally discover if you were accurate and everything goes as planned. There's something beautifully orgasmic to it. It's like cooking something difficult for yourself and sitting down and realizing you made something good and now it's all yours. Every sliver of health you take from someone's meter was earned through this delicate interplay. It's so good. Writing about it required me to do the thing game critics should never do, and start using unfitting metaphors for food and or sex. This stuff is hard to do well, and it really shows in games where it's done poorly. As an object lesson in bad versions of this, check out Lords of the Fallen, a game that was very clearly made by people who saw that Dark Souls was popular and wanted to make one of those, but didn't quite figure out that it actually takes a lot of effort to make this kind of game fun. I've beaten this game all the way through twice. This game is terrible. Even the basic sword weapon is so slow and deliberate that it becomes a chore. There's no light running attack at all. Your guy just stops dead in his tracks. The controls are so slow and clunky that I was sure me computer was simply too slow to run it, but no, this is just how the game moves. There are fast weapons, but they never escape the damage curve, and you basically either pressing the button to immediately swing, but dealing very little damage, or dealing more but waiting days for something to connect. I'm used to a weapon having a light attack, which is quicker, and a heavy attack, which is slower. When a weapon has a slow attack and an even slower attack, the entire feel of the game is broken. Great swords are basically impossible to use, except for some reason. The running heavy attack comes out really fast, making it essentially the fastest move in the game. This one move carried me until I discovered the broken shield bash mechanic. I'm actually starting to worry about the fact I beat this game twice. I think that says something about me. Weapons in Dark Souls are balanced so well that you don't even notice until this aspect is missing. But it isn't just these central principles of control that make the series fun. This is What's more interesting is how the world tests your ability to use these mechanics and thereby create the very specific feeling of adventure they do better than any other series. Let's take, for example, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Maybe you've heard of it. It's a solid game. However, a couple of things irked me about it. One is how there's this constant need to explain itself to you. Every new concept or creature or enemy in the game is explained to you carefully and in an easily digestible manner. When Stalfosses, Stalfies spawn to attack you, they appear at a safe distance and then jump away. When a trap is introduced, it's shown to you in a way where you immediately know its entire path and what it does and so on. The game loves to tell you in straightforward ways how it works or what's happening and let you deal with it how you want. This is, fine, and I guess it's a masterpiece that I've loved my whole life. It's very fair on the player. But what I don't like about fairness is how it impacts the sense that you're supposed to be on an adventure. Link is trying to save the world by journeying into the heart of darkness and delivering the temples from evil. So why are the enemies taking the time to introduce themselves? And why are the traps making sure you know where they are and what they do? Evil is playing fair and always being careful to show me its weak point. Nothing is ever quite surprising in Zelda. Maybe for some types of games, fairness is actually a good thing, in making itself too clear about what's happening and how it works. Looking back, there's something really weirdly sanitized about Zelda games. What makes the world of any given Souls game so much more interesting is that it doesn't play fair. Take, for example, mimics in Dark Souls. The only way of learning that there are enemies in the game who look like chests and eat you to death if you try to open them is to find one and try to open it and die. This isn't bad design, though, oh, how dare they not give me the chance to not die there. It's good design. Because they've, quote unquote, unfairly sacrificed the player's life that one time, they've thoroughly instilled a sense of paranoia and awareness and given you an even greater sense of having the odds stacked against you in a horrible world full of murder and death. It's not that the game is unfair to players, it's that the world itself is unfair to people. Life is unfair in the world of Dark Souls, and you learn that the hard way by dying in it. After you get eaten by one mimic, before you know it, you'll be attacking every chest you see just in case. And in Dark Souls 2, you can accidentally destroy a chest if you attack it too much, meaning your own paranoia can be bad for you if you employ it the wrong way. It creates a more full sense of paranoia and being immersed in a world that wants you dead. And once you make it past a difficult area, beat a hard boss, or successfully predict that a chest is a mimic and destroy, you'll feel like you've gained ground against a genuinely dangerous world. The Souls games don't always play fair, but that makes besting them feel all the sweeter. Like a genuine victory, and that feeling is worth getting killed unfairly a couple of times because it creates the sense of there being great odds to beat. The feeling of triumphing against adversity is increased when that adversity has already actually killed you at least once. This is where the idea of the game's insane difficulty comes from. Not the game's actual difficulty, but the way they keep introducing you to new elements by killing you with them to create a specific sense of mood. The only way to know there's going to be traps in this area in Bloodborne is to step on this pile of, in retrospect, really conspicuous wood, hear the click, and shit yourself. Or if you badass, you can dodge a hit and then go about your merry way. The first time you fall for a trap, you're looking for them everywhere. You've approached the whole game with a see, though. Fuck. UV approached the whole game with a greater sense of awareness and appreciation for its design. You will still get caught in a few traps, but they'll always feel a bit like you could have done more to see them coming. By the time you get to Canehurst Castle, the battlements have raised floors that look just a little bit like plates for traps, so we avoided them at all costs. Now, it turns out that's just what the floor looks like. Any game that successfully makes you afraid of a quirky pavement is unquestionably a masterpiece. As you say, I feel, I feel, I will pay I for kai I I see It's bred a sincere, visceral fear of your surroundings based on how they've treated you in the past. It's wonderful. The Souls games get into you, like inside your head, and all the gesticulating about crazy difficulty melts away in the face of a fun, unforgiving, but enriching series of encounters that test you in ways games rarely manage to do, an almost internal level. You stop doing the maths about how quickly your attack goes off and trying to figure out an opening to move, and you start to just know the right time, because all this stuff is so deep in your head that you don't even have to think about it. It becomes like an instinct. The only experience that comes close lately is a rifle game called Thumper. It's dark, it's noisy, it's metallic. It's a world of jaggedness, like a journey through hell, riding directly into the mouth of hell, even like that thing's a boss. And it's a very unforgiving. You die in 2 hits, but at a certain point, you stop dying because the rhythm, the sound gets inside you. The line between player and game feels like it's evaporated. You begin to sense what notes are coming next, because the music has got into you on an almost instinctive level. Because this is there, wow, do you say there, wow, no. You can't really sell Thumper or the Souls games to some Yoon based purely on their mechanics, because the enjoyable thing about these games is when all these things are so ingrained that the mechanics themselves seem to fade away, and you are fully transported into the salviatic nightmare of sound and sight. Salviatic. I just made up a word attempting to describe the feeling a game gave me. Baby, baby, oh, the way why Generally that's a sign that something good is happening. Why am I talking about Thumper, a Rohithm game, here? Well, you will have to find out. There's probably a reason. Oh God, is there a reason? Shit, did I write that part down? Did I write that part? Did I, oh fuck, this page is blank. I'm just fiddling with paper to make it sound like it wrote a script. Shit, I forgot where I'm going with this. And now for the reason this video was made. I know, I make videos on purpose for a reason. Who'd have thought? Okay, so already into the Souls series. I saw lots of people playing Demon's Souls but couldn't afford Ops 3 at the time. Got on board with the version of Dark Souls, yeah. That version, but I really liked it. And I also really liked Dark Souls 2. Okay, come on, it sits good. It sits. I later went back and played Demon's Souls as well and very briefly delved into the precursor series, King's Field, before realizing they were a bit crap and stopping. Generally, I'd call myself a big fan. I could talk for a long time about why the series is great. In fact, I fully intend to do that right now. But up until 2015, the series had a problem. It's the kind of vague problem that's hard to talk about, especially because I don't actually have that problem. A lot of people seem not to really be able to get into them and enjoy them. There's a pretty large group of people who do really like them, then another group of people who pick every game up but don't really get too far before getting kind of done with it, and another group that probably don't really get them at all. I have a sneaking suspicion that videos about Souls games get super popular in the first place because people watch them so they don't have to play the games or try to see why other people play something they don't get for themselves. I have one friend in particular who tried all of them and just didn't to get them at all, found them overly esoteric and difficult in a way that was fun and full of overly defensive, get good, spouting fanboys and just not all they were cracked up to be. But then March 2015 happened. Then Bloodborne happened. Like the other games, my friend tried this one expecting to bounce off, but instead he fell in. He's played a ton of this game, and I think it's one of his favorites ever, at least based on how he seems to have finished it like 12 times or something. But more importantly, and this is the impetus behind this whole video, to be honest, he went back to the other games and finally got them. All of a sudden, he likes those as well. And this has happened with a couple of other people too. Some people just on to get the Souls games play Bloodborne and then suddenly have this deep and abiding passion for the whole series. So the main purpose of this video is to try and figure out why exactly that might be. Let's get down to brass tacks. Let's dig a little deeper. Did anyone else think The Princess and the Frog felt kind of like it was phoning it in? Now we want to get into a rather heated and complex question. Is it possible to play a game wrong? I think this is genuinely difficult to answer. People are going to have different experiences no matter what, and not everyone has to like something. But part of me also feels that there are right and wrong ways to approach a game. But what does that mean for people who want to make good criticism and attempt to analyze the rights and wrongs of game design if the results are going to be so subjective anyway? Does game design even matter? If you can create the greatest game ever, but some people will just play it wrong and have a bad time. Well, to a certain extent, that's always going to happen, isn't it? There will always be people for whom an experience just isn't for them, or who are too dumb to understand how to play something, or don't realize that something they think is good is objectively bad. Some people really like Fallout 3, and they seem to be the specific type of people who think clicking a dislike button is a decent way of expressing their feelings. In other words, objectively stupid people like Fallout 3. And there is a right way to play the Souls games. You can hide behind the shield a lot, die over and over trying to memorize every encounter, or use magic from a distance to avoid having to engage with the game, or wear the heaviest armor and hope that all save you. But the reality is it's just more fun playing it as someone who dodges, who weaves, who parries, and who uses situational awareness to assess a situation, and maybe get out of it the first time without so much trial or error. It's not that hard. The Souls games aren't really all that difficult. You dodge the attack and then you hit them with the stick. Done. I just solved all the Souls games for you. Everything else is just pretentiousness about preparing toady. I know that's stupid. Ignore all of that. Oh, you think breathing fire is sexy? Sorry, that's not in this semester. I'm gonna have to kick you out of the school. Is it rude of me to say there's right and wrong ways to have fun with a game? Well, maybe. But thanks to the magic of Facecam, I can literally see this in effect. Here's Patrick Klepek painstakingly muscling his way through the final boss of Demon's Souls with his shield raised, a magic shield up, attacking only when it's utterly safe. When it's over, he breathes a sigh of relief. He's glad it's over. He's glad to be done with the game. Was that fight fun? It seemed torturous. No wonder people think these games aren't for everyone if this is how they're replaying it. Now, here's Patrick fighting a boss in Dark Souls 2 with no easy magic to help him. He doesn't even have a shield. He's dual-wielding maces. Does he breathe a sigh of relief when it's over? Well, I just came back and totally hooked the pursuer. Of course not. Is Dark Souls 2 such a massively more amazing experience than Demon's Souls? Or was he just playing it in a way that was less conducive to actually enjoying himself? More importantly, what leads people to play the game one way over the other? It's a difficult concept to deal with because it doesn't to concern the mechanics of the game itself, but rather how the game relates its mechanics to the player, which is far more important and defines how the player deals with these mechanics over the course of their experience. I covered this concept briefly in my Fallout 3 analysis, and I realize in retrospect it was the smartest thing I said. The first lockpick and hacking scenarios are immediately next to the means to circumvent them, which accidentally teaches the player not to bother with these mechanics because there's going to be workarounds and the time or point investment is better spent elsewhere. The lockpicking and hacking mechanics themselves are fine in a vacuum, but you've just hamstrung the player's perception of how they surface in the game. When you find the password in the dresser next to the computer, you're not going to go, "Oh boy, I can't wait to invest in me character's hacking abilities." You think, whoa, hacking is for idiots. I'll just look in people's desks. The lockpicking and hacking mechanics themselves were absolutely fine in my opinion. They were perfectly acceptable for this kind of game, but the actual experience of how they reintroduced to the player influences how they behave in their interactions with them, and thereby alters the amount of fun they can have. You play games in the manner dictated by the experience of the game itself, and sometimes that manner isn't great. Now, I haven't really seen anyone else writing about this psychological side of design, and believe me, looked. Even Game Feel, Stefan Swink's seminal work on good game design, seems mostly concerned with making mechanics that look and feel and play well, but doesn't really consider how a game causes the player to start engaging way see the Zelda. That's the then then they see it said the then they see it then they sin sin And since, from the sounds of things, I'm basically the discoverer of this concept, right? Does that mean I get to name it? Well, I'm gonna call it play conditioning. Ye sure. If you've got a better name or it turns out there's a large body of work dealing with this concept already that I've just missed, let me know and I'll go mope in the corner for a while. This is a little different from a more well-known concept called conveyance, which is how a game tells you what its mechanics are and what things do. Play conditioning, my new made-up term, refers to how players are led to use those mechanics by how the game is executed. I might just be splitting hairs to make it look like I came up with a new concept, but I do feel that there's an important distinction there. Let's take a look at the conditioning at play in the early levels of Demon's Souls. The first boss you encounter has an unreasonably high amount of health and can kill you in either one hit or 1.1 of a hit based on your character. And once he kills you, you don to get another shot. You revive in the Nexus where the story properly starts. But even if you do beat it, you advance to this dragon and he kills you. The lesson, no matter what, is you will die. The game's trying to tell you that you're going to fail sometimes, so you might want to learn from it. It's a warning about the game's intense difficulty and the nature of death in this game. Embrace that it's possible and build on your mistakes. The first time I beat the early tutorial enemies and then passed through the fog door to meet this giant hulking monster was genuinely kind of surprising and terrifying. There's this moment of, oh, shit, it's a genius. Your almost inevitable death at this guy, eh? Things immediately communicates that you're going to be facing seemingly insurmountable odds, which makes succeeding against them all the more satisfying. You run into versions of this boss later in the game and cloning on them After all, the experience and weapons you've gained is a reminder of how far you've come. It's pretty good, but getting there requires playing the game for tens more hours, and that's not a particularly good kind of return on your investment. But getting there, playing the game, and there, by to man, Plus, being killed no matter what at the start of a game isn't exactly all that encouraging either. It kind of has a negative effect on players, I feel. Not everyone's going to enjoy being led into the game in this manner. Okay, first enemy, first boss. What's up, Vanguard? Yo, do you think this told Patrick he should be fast and frenetic and take more risks? The first real level also embodies this paradox. It's a test bed for the sort of tricks and traps that will be used against you for the rest of the game. For this you wills, for the sort of it's probably intended to teach you a lot about the game to come and prime you to know what to look for and how to act. This area here has a really obvious enemy just in front of you that you will be walking towards, but there's a guy also hiding just behind the doorway. Some games don't to show you everything easily because the challenge is to see if you think to look for it. Countless enemies are going to hide in places you can't quite see over the course of this game and its successors, but after this one, you know it can happen, and the real challenge is dealing with that possibility. But the problem is, if all of these ways of showing you the game can kill you, it does feel kind of shit. The game is still really, really good, but it's hard to imagine a beginner who's just started a Souls game for the first time opening up, dying to this section a couple of times, and having a good time doing it. It's possible that it accidentally imbued players with the lesson. This isn't fun or fair, and you should just give up or play it in the most boring possible way in the hopes you survive. Patrick played the game wrong because he was conditioned by the experience to approach it that way. I have to admit that I played Demon's Souls after playing the first two Dark Souls games, so these early sections weren't nearly as excruciating as they would have been if this was my first ever engagement with the series and its mechanics. Dark Souls has this exact problem, too, but it lessens it somewhat. You start, fight easy enemies with a broken sword, no problem, and then bam. Asylum Demon. Some dum dum dum. He's huge, and he probably kills you the first time. To survive, You have to run past him and through a door to the side, and then, no joke, the first thing the game gives you is a shield. What lesson does this instill to a player? It says, hide behind this to survive. You loop back around and kill the demon by getting the drop on it and having better weapons. It's definitely improvement over the Vanguard, where you get one shot and then you redone, because you immediately get the payoff of besting the opponent, who probably beat you at least once, but by then the game's already kind of told you that shields are the way to go. So it's not surprising that a lot of early players run around with their shield up constantly and don't really play in the kind of active, action-y way that lends to really enjoying yourself. You can see this play conditioning in effect with, for example, Geop, who let's played the game in 2012. He plays very conservatively and slowly and has his shield up even when nothing's around just in case. He's very careful, and it takes him 5 videos to get to the bonfire in Undead Burg. And once he gets his hands on a spear, he spends a huge portion of the game attacking safely from behind his shield. In the description of the Let's Play, he explains that he played a small bit of Demon's Souls before giving up. In other words, this play style emerges from when you experience the parts of the first 2 games that seemingly condition you to play the game in the most boring way in order to survive. Something very telling he does is constantly discuss when is a good time to heal because he wants to conserve his flasks. He learned to treat healing like that in Demon's Souls, where you could literally run out of healing items and have none and just be screwed. He takes a little while to fully take on board on the instinctive level people play games that wasting some of your estus isn't a big deal because it's not gone forever. In other words, he's actually suffering in Dark Souls because of the way Demon's Souls taught him to play this kind of game. Critically, the entire Souls series, even Demon's Souls, have done quite well, but plenty of players didn't like Demon's Souls and a few critics did agree with them. Take, for example, Yahtzee, everyone's favorite fast-talking English sweary man who I'm not jealous of at all. So in conclusion, fuck you, Demon's Souls. A challenge is one thing, but trying to break down a fucking cement wall with your forehead isn't a challenge, it's grounds for getting fucking sectioned. That's a pretty emphatic no to what Demon's Souls is doing. I remember people on forums at the time showing his feelings about it. It's trial and error. The combat is too punishing. It feels overly hard. You have to take it slow to do well, and that just isn't fun, and so on. At this point, it's worth mentioning that, yeah, Dark Souls did gangbusters. It got super popular and had a massively committed following many times the size of the one Demon's Souls ended up with, and even Yahtzee came around on it. But hang on a second. Let's check out why. After watching a decent Let's Play of the game, gone over the wiki a few times, and a 6-week preparation with a team of advisors and physical trainers, I was able to break through the wall. And I suppose that's the first failing of Dark Souls, that you need the fucking Cliff's Notes to get into it. It's hard to recommend a game to someone and say, but first here's all the research you have to do. Because that person's gonna say, well, you say this game's more fun than Zelda Bomb, but Zelda doesn't require me to read any technical manuals or peer-reviewed journals and watch someone else play it for a few hours first. This doesn't mean the game is bad. Dark Souls is a very fun video game. I hope that goes without saying at this point, but that's a heck of a barrier for entry into that fun, isn't it? I'm gonna quickly list the reasons why Dark Souls does better conditioning than Demon's Souls and helped on board just enough people for it to get the popularity it did. Firstly, the opening I told you about before. You get killed by the asylum demon, but you respawn just outside. The rematch is immediate. Instead of being killed and starting with a sense of loss and failure as the beginning of the game, the player is killed, but then gets to take their revenge. Losing, trying again, and winning becomes the expectation instead of, losing. Secondly, there's loads of great quality of life improvements. Being hollow, the equivalent of a spirit in Demon's Souls, no longer halves your life. No longer halves your equivalent. In a sort of Demon's Souls was made much harder if you ever died and lost your human body, so the player was punished for failure by making it easier to fail until they get a human form back, which is quite a rare occurrence in that game. In Dark Souls, you have the same health and free to not feel like you already fucked yourself by dying. So you have less to lose, so you take more risks and do better. Also, the Estus Flask. You had a finite amount of healing in Demon's Souls. You either found healing items in the world or bought them using souls, which were quite hard-earned. Using one meat it was gone. One meat it was going. Why? This made deciding to heal feel risky. Like if you die now, you basically wasted that healing you just used. This made players less likely to heal, which meant they died more, which meant they had less fun. You could farm souls to buy more, but you know what isn't fun? Farming items just to have enough stuff to get a proper run at the boss. The Estus Flask regenerates every time you die, meaning you never feel like you were actually wasting it because it all come back. This made players more willing to use their healing item, which made them live longer and do better and have more fun. Those were the main two, in my opinion. There are more, but they are not really worth bringing up here. If making a game with Demon's Souls as a system of health, I would have made your life bar and soul form your actual life bar and have your health double when you were human. So being human at least felt like a buff instead of simply being able to use all of your health bar for a while. My third reason why Dark Souls feels better is the existence of Demon's Souls itself. I know it's a bit weird, but I think me reasoning is sound. Demon's Souls felt to players like this weird new thing that did stuff differently, and different doesn't always feel good to play. Some aspects felt like active mistakes. Why would they make the game this punishing and hard? Why were there so many weird traps trying to directly kill him? And so on. Dark Souls, by being the second in a series, is viewed differently by its players. Now all the weirdness and differentness and difficulty are justifiable. The fact they did it twice makes it feel like, no, this is all just intentional. Suddenly, bad ideas and weird concepts simply become staples of a series. For a movie example, The Purge had to justify its very existence and its concept to a fresh audience when it came out. But The Purge 2 and 3 didn't, because they were the second and third stories in a series. So even if The Purge 1 is worse than the others, which it's worth keeping in mind that it did receive a different critical perspective than its sequels did. Dark Souls has slightly better play conditioning, but it's still quite clearly not that great at it. So it isn't just that Bloodborne is a better game than the others, although that is kinda true in my opinion. Bloodborne changes people's perspectives on a more subtle level. I have a theory about this game. No, I have a hypothesis about this game. I have a aha 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 this this alha alha down they this Bloodborne, it teaches you how to enjoy Souls games. Let me show you just a couple of the design differences that seem small but have a massive, massive difference on the mindset of players. Firstly, the most obvious one, there's no shield. Where is it? It's not there. This isn't how these games work. You don't start the game with a shield at all, no matter what. This is genius. This is. It's a spicy meatball of game design goodness. Normally food metaphors are bad, but I can literally taste the design genius here. The shield has been the bane of the Souls series from the very start. It's the true villain, and it's precisely because of its function and use. Let's go back. The shield. A classic. You hold a button down and you immediately protected from obvious harm you facing. There's a parry mechanic, which you can use to make an enemy completely exposed and hit them for way more damage. But why take the risk? You can just block the attack, and then attack when there's an opening. Just wait. You can do a dodge roll, but you're only immune to getting hit for a few frames. Why bother when you can just stand there and be fine? This game's not so hard. Just hold the shield button. Welcome to having a shitty time. The fun, frenetic dodge mechanic and the incredibly engaging parry stuff is immediately foreclosed by a much safer option. Not necessarily better, but for early players, safer. A good deal of players will spend a lot of time with their shield up, playing it safe, waiting for only the best possible moment to drop it, strike, and then bring it back up again. The shields only get bigger and more defensive. They seem to actively encourage using more rather than less over time. One reason why early players gravitate towards spears is because you can even use them while the shield is up. It's encouraging the players to turtle up, play very, very slowly, and just not have a good time. This is one major reason why people don't enjoy these games. They tell you're going to do a lot, and then hand you a means of protecting yourself, and the immediate assumption is that you should, use it. But it makes for boring, slow play. You could try parrying, or just put the shield away and have fun using the other options available to you, like two-handing the sword, but the game doesn't really seem to encourage doing it, does it? No shield means no one is safe. You have to dodge, and your offhand weapon is now a gun whose sole use, unless you spec your character a specific way, is for parrying. Parry or dodge, or D. No easy, boring path at all. You now have no choice but to play the game the fun way. Welcome to the fun zone. Welcome to the fun zone. I can't to believe it. Like, can you imagine being in the room when hit attacker Miyazaki was looking at playtest footage of the previous games and coming up with the concept for Bloodborne? And he was like, hey, take out the shields. Like, what? Nanny. Hit attacker. How will people defend themselves? By learning to play the game in a way that's actually fun. Mate. That's how Japanese people talk, with that exact accent. No shields, ever. None. Okay, one shield, but it's a joke. Put a joke in the ARM description about them engendering passivity. Passivity. God, I can't do this voice. Sorry. Broad strokes. Let's think about what lesson these games teach you. Demon's Souls hands you a sword and shield, and then kills you, and tells you're going to do a lot. Dark Souls kills you, and hands you a shield. Bloodborne kills you, and hands you a blade and a gun. It's commonly said that the best defense is a good offense, and while I am currently on trial for taking that concept too seriously, it's certainly true here. It's just genius. It's always been possible to play without a shield. Two-handing a weapon, or dodging, or parrying has always been viable and always been more fun and fluid than using the shield, but they read just harder enough compared to putting the shield up that most people don't want to take the risk, and thus end up playing the whole game like this. At which point how far you get through these games becomes a question of how committed you are to being bored, and there are people who've always played the games like this, but they tend to have needed a long time to figure out this style of play and really get into it. By removing shields, players are funneled into that particular play style far quicker. And what's magical about this is that this mindset carries over to the previous games. The incredible potential of the series is made available to people without the need to figure out that play style for themselves by investing tons of time into an experience that starts out feeling kind of plodding. This is one reason why the early Demons, Souls, and Dark Souls on community seem so hardcore and committed, because previously the only sort of person who would stick with early Demons, Souls, or Dark Souls long enough to get to the where it's actually fun is the kind of person who's willing to invest a lot of time into something that starts out not all that fun, and that to also so 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 sorry The early fan base of the Souls series is a bunch of weirdos because that's the only type of person the series could attract early on. No offense intended here. I'm one of those people. Okay. I'm just being self-aware. Without making the experience all that much easier, in fact, by making it harder by taking the shield out, Bloodborne opens up the fun way of experiencing this type of game to more people. And that's just magical, isn't it? Don't you think? I'm still reeling from it, to be honest. Like, what level of genius does a man have to be operating on to be able to go, okay, I've thought about it, and by removing a key aspect of our game series, we're gonna vastly improve the experience, not just of this game, but of all the previous ones, because people will go back and play them that way and have a fucking great time. Like, oh me God, isn't I am sorry. I try not to, like, screech too much in me videos anymore. People say it sounds fake, even though that is actually just how we talk, but I just can't not. It's so brilliant. This is so it's so Woo. One in. Done. Praise the mace. Now, I don't know which Patrick you'd vote for president of the school council, but I already cast me vote early. I have a mail-in vote to the video game school. Complementing this just genius system is rallying. If you get hit, that section of lost health lingers there for a while, and you get some of that health back if you hit an enemy. You can theoretically get it all back almost every time. This feels, at first, like a simple gimmick, right? But think about how it impacts the player's sense as they play the game. Now, when you get hit, you don't immediately think to back off and heal and just break the flow of the combat. In every Souls game before that, that's the reaction. Now you can keep going. You can take your health back from the guy who hit you. Bloody blimey. Like, now you always have the option of being a little more vicious and getting away with it. It's hugely impactful on the flow and action of combat. Combined with the loss of shields, you carefully encouraged into a mindset that's just more aggressive and tactile and fun and more big, fun-sounding words. It's not even a huge difference, is it? But it results in an improved approach to combat that's more satisfying for players and which, like not using a shield, carries back over to the previous games. Bloodborne at times feels like a tutorial for how to play the previous ones because even when you take rallying out, killing an enemy before healing is generally a smarter option anyway. You've been forced to get good the way people used to have to be obnoxious and hammer away for hundreds of hours to achieve. The developers of Bloodborne didn't blame players for playing it badly. They blamed the game and then they fixed it. The other way players subtly influenced is the slight change in the way weapons work. Quick weapons feel responsive and larger weapons feel slower and more deliberate, but there's a genuine sense of weight and power when you pull them off. But the edges have been rough at times. The biggest problem has been the array of weapons available. There are, in my opinion, a bit too many. There's a bunch of different kinds of sword, all with slightly different or majorly different animations. Maces, rapiers, spears, greatswords, ultra greatswords, ridiculous fuck-off big berserk reference swords, battle axes, hand axes, stupid axes, and so on. The variety initially seems fine, but in practice it means you have to figure out and remember dozens of different timings and animations and ranges for both one-handing and two-handing all these weapons in order to know which you prefer or which one is best for each scenario. It's not particularly inviting to players, and did we really need three very similar versions of the same moveset when one would have had more clarity and been less cluttered? Did we really need a bastard sword and a claymore? Bloodborne solves this handily from, like, 8 different directions at once. Firstly, there's nowhere near as many weapons, but all of them are unique. There are variations. Like the saw cleaver has the saw spear and the Kirkhammer has Ludwig's holy blade, but even they feel different enough. But they don't make you feel like you've lost out on tons of variations you could have experimented with because the weapons all have alternative forms that increase the versatility of each individual weapon and even give you moves that let you switch between them as you re-attacking, which is really cool. Every weapon has an amazing amount of moves and uses, but you never overwhelmed because no weapon is clearly worse or better than any other anymore. I'm looking at you. Sword that you get that's the same moveset as a starting sword, but it's just better for no reason. There's no longer a really obviously better version of the weapon you were already using you now have to switch to later on because it's underleveled. But overall, these changes gently coax players into feeling like the choice they made is valid instead of living in constant fear that they re-hamstringing themselves. The saw cleaver can be your endgame weapon, and you can become intimately knowledgeable with its use and never have to worry if you should actually be using something else, and the weapons are unique and varied enough that they never feel samey even if you use them for the whole game. If you really like generica, there's one in there. It just happens to be able to turn into a cool weapon. The downsides of each weapon are almost always clear and understandable. You know, the Kirkhammers, but a bit slow. The sword cane is really quick and has a whip state that has a huge range, but it doesn't deal all that much damage. Okay, there is one thing. The Tornitrus is weird. It's actually my favorite weapon. Its alternate form is it doesn't have one. It just becomes briefly electric. It's generally pretty strong and fast, and knowing when to take the time to electrify it for even more damage is great. Its downside is really silly though. It has a low durability and it goes down quicker than normal weapons, meaning you have to repair it more often by returning to the hunter's dream and fixing it up. But it doesn't deteriorate that quickly and repairing costs next to nothing. It's at worst a hassle. That's not really much of a downside. I get that it's trying to make it a weapon you have to use sparingly. I think that's a neat idea. But in practice it doesn't lose durability fast enough to be a major issue, and it's annoying to go to fix when it does get low. Dark Souls 2 actually had a better system where resting at a bonfire restored your weapons each time and durability was lower all round. So you really did have to take that into consideration, and some weapons really could only be used sparingly during a single run. Instead of with the Tornatras, which is basically a really good weapon, you have to repair a bit more than usual, which is just not a huge downside. I think this would have been even better if they dripped off Dark Souls 2 a little more and had durability that comes back when you die every time but goes down even faster, so you really did have to pick the times to pull out the funtime electric murder death stick. I think maybe the over-the-top dislike some fans exhibited towards Dark Souls 2 caused the developers to walk back on ideas that were genuinely better. Okay, you could spend a good deal of this video defending Dark Souls 2. In fact, like half of the script is me doing that, but I do have some sense of when a video is getting to be too much, so I've cut all those bits out and I'm gonna compile a video looking at the central complaints about it and why all of them are wrong and lies from criminals, and I'm gonna put that up in a separate video a bit later on. When that comes up, I'll put the link here. So, okay, cool. Back to Bloodborne. While I have already talked about how great the weapons have always generally felt in Souls games, a couple of attacks and moves still felt just a little bit like traps. Moves you really should not use under any circumstances because you'll never be in a position where they re actually useful or they re just ridiculous. Especially with the larger weapons and the second or third moves of their heavier attack strings. The second heavy swing of the two-handed dark blade is a honeypot, a sexy, powerful trap designed to bait you into being killed for attempting to actually use it. Almost every weapon has multiple swings for its or to, even if it shouldn't, because how often is that attack gonna get the chance to go off in this action game? Giving players that option will cause them to try and use it and suffer the consequences in a way that doesn't really feel fun. Giving the players the option to do this is inviting them to get killed. Bloodborne makes a lot of subtle changes here. Firstly, their two is no longer an attack with second or third swings. It's a very definitively just a single move. It takes away the inherent tension of not knowing if you should be mashing Roan or doing the strong but slower ones and seeing how many you can get in. It makes it immediately intuitive that you should be doing the quicker attacks and finishing with the strong one or using it when you know a great place for its particular timing. This moveset is slightly more limited than the previous games, but in a way that's good because it means players aren't getting bogged down by moves that are actually useless, but beg you to keep using them because you technically can use them. So even though you can only do one, if you re-given a big window, you can still maximize damage with it by charging it up. However, quick weapons or weapons with different properties aren't hamstrung by this. The whip function of the sword cane doesn't charge and can combo into a second move because as a relatively quick weapon, the idea of doing more than one attack with it isn't inherently a trap. A cute extra thing Ivy noticed is that with the really heavy weapon, there is a second or two. If you fully charge Ludwig's Holy Blade, there's a second attack that can come out after, but only if you fully charged it. I like this move because it's an acknowledgement that if you in a position where you just fully charged a very slow and deliberate attack, and you did just hit someone with it, You're probably in a position where you might as well have access to another slow but powerful move. To my recollection, this is the only weapon with this property. It's really cool. The fully charged tours so strong already that it also usually staggers whoever was coming for you. So that second attack is basically a reward for mastering one of the most careful moves in the game. Second, the sickle the as a town the It's also worth mentioning that the weapon upgrade system is no longer a horrifying nightmare where you can make a weapon into a crushing weapon or a fire weapon or poison or magic or an enchanted weapon. Yes, those are both different things in the same game. Or a crystal weapon. Or a mundane weapon. A dark weapon. Half of these options will actively ruin your weapon unless you built your character a certain way, and the resources you expend doing this are rare enough that you can't afford to waste them. I get nervous whenever I'm at a weapon upgrade screen in a Souls game, and that's maybe not great. Bloodborne keeps the straightforward aspects of the upgrade path. The strays of the upgraded paid You spend blood echoes and bloodstone shards to make your weapon just generally better and bloodier. But there are also gems that you can put on a weapon to change its properties, but they explain what they do in simple, easy to understand ways, and they can just be taken out. So experimentation with weapons is actively encouraged for once. This relatively simple change makes the whole game feel a lot more inviting. You know you aren't going to render a weapon unusable or waste one of the 2 or 3 magic stone upgrade things you will get in the space of playing, and that makes you more willing to experiment and mess about. And that it just feels better in a big way. On top of this, the designs of the enemies you fight have themselves been altered to force you to play the game in a more fun manner. Here are some of the generic enemies from the previous games. They like to attack a very specific, simple way. They walk up to you, and then they engage a rather simple attack. More importantly, when they redon approaching you, they kind of stop moving. Dodging backwards is an effective way to get out of their range and free up some time and distance. Lots of bosses behave like this as well. Get out of their range while they re-attacking you, and you in a safe zone of sorts. Fast forward to Bloodborne. Most enemies move very differently in an arguably more realistic manner. When even early enemies attack, they continue moving forward, stumble ahead, and stuff. Dodging backwards as early as the main area is a recipe for danger. The game immediately tells you that you have to think harder about how you dealing with these attacks. The second boss most people encounter, Gascoigne, is intensely good at this. Both versions of this fight, both before and after he transforms into a monster, have attacks where dodging backwards leaves you primed to be attacked again. In monster form, almost all of his attacks launch him further forward. The only way to succeed against this guy is to get good at parrying him or learn to dodge to the side or even forward through his attacks with your momentary invincibility to get in a strike of your own. Or you could keep trying to dodge backwards and complain that the game doesn't let you escape. My first few attempts at Gascoigne were the least fun I'd had in the series because, as someone who regards themselves as a seasoned Souls player where dodging backwards was how we survived, this was the first major stumbling block of the game. It forced me to unlearn a style of play that was, in retrospect, conservative and uninteresting, and honestly was worth forgetting. I should way just I an intended to By the time of the attempts where I was close to winning, I was having more fun than any other encounter in previous games because the way I played was more engaging and felt faster and more fluid. I was choosing not to try to escape a skirmish because the enemy wouldn't let me do it so easily. Instead, I was staying close and getting in my own hits and ignoring when I was taking damage because I knew we would get it back just by continuing the fight and hitting them. Defeating Gascoigne is a genuine victory, and once you've done so, you've proven that you're capable of approaching battle in a way that's actually fun and quick and fast. You can't hang back and shoot spells at him and just not learn anything the whole game and be generally bored. You have to, well, learn to play the game the way many people have always played these games, but which doesn't come naturally. I could stop right here. You can already see the point, can't you? When you pick up Bloodborne, the first couple of hours of using these altered mechanics and mastering them train you to play not just Bloodborne, but any game in the series in a manner that's actually fun. After years of hitchhiking, normal people have finally been handed the keys to the Souls games, and that's a really good thing because these games are good. They just previously never quite showed people why they were good or how to play them in a way that felt good. I feel that this is why me friend liked it more and then went back and liked the rest, why people who couldn't get into any of them could get into this one at least a little more even if it still wasn't really their thing. In his review of Bloodborne, Yahtzee says this. From software who have been doing on specific thing for about 4 games now. Fortunately, it's a thing I'm into because I like explorative Metroidvania style gameplay, I like subtle storytelling, I like banging me head against a wall with a scary monster drawn on it. Trying to break down a fucking cement wall with your forehead isn't a challenge. It's grounds for getting fucking sectioned. From Demon's Souls to Dark Souls to Dark Souls to Bloodborne. Same shit, different anise. Dark Souls 2 is the 3rd game in a series that began with Demon's Souls, which I was thinking I should go back and try again sometime. Ooh, maybe you should have given Demon's Souls a proper shot. What a fantastic idea, you piece of shit. I'm not actually criticizing Yahtzee here, although I is a kind of fan because he didn't give Demon's Souls a fair shot in the first place. I'm using his transition to show how this is just how perception of a game can change over time when it gets iterated upon. This transition and why it happened is valuable. Yahtzee's gone from hating Demon's Souls and thinking it's trial and error bullshit that isn't fun, to claiming it's part of a series he really likes and which, in his opinion, are all the good play conditioning can cause a player to suddenly want to commit to an experience superficially very similar to the one they previously really didn't. This is why Bloodborne is amazing. It's trained people to engage the game in a way that makes the experience worth having. Some games can be a good experience, but not very good at bringing people into it. Isn't it somewhat possible that there are many great games that slip through the cracks simply because they didn't fully prep the player to properly play and enjoy them? Maybe there's a right way to play every game. A right way to play every game. At the very least, there's a right way to play a Souls game, and Bloodborne finally teaches players what that way is in a straightforward manner. Okay, gonna be honest. That's the me core argument. I think I just summarized it in about 40 minutes, which, all things considered, is pretty short for me. But while I am here talking about Bloodborne, I might as well summarize the less conditiony reasons why it's so great and get more into the general reasons. Let's talk about the rest of the stuff. The Souls games in general, except for 2, have this tendency to not really have an interesting story to me personally. They read like, oh, you have to stop thinking. He went bad and or mad. All the characters you meet are mostly hangers-on who are also messing about in this doomed world. They tend to be interesting, but I could honestly take them or leave them. The story's extra wrinkles feel like they don't really add any value to the experience itself and are more just interesting stuff you can write wikis about later. There's an overall sense that all the fun stuff in the story has already happened, and while it was probably interesting and it's cool to find out about, the player is essentially given a walking tour of a world where all the cool stuff has already happened. All the major players in the story are either dead or hanging out waiting to be killed by you. Bloodborne is interesting because you're not on any singular quest. No one tells you to kill a bunch of people to do this stuff. The game even makes a joke about how unnecessary the story is, but the dude's unwillingness to share the truth with you is actually a clever setup for how this guy is maybe himself not super trustworthy. The story is happening at you instead of in the past. You reactively trying to uncover what's happening as you play, not because it might be interesting to find out about in general, but to have a grip on what's happening and what result my actions are having on the world. There's a real sense of time passing over the course of the game as the night progresses and the people locked in their houses get more worried or sicker or begin to transform into monsters themselves. There's this game called Ocarina of Zelda: Legend of to Wait. There's this game called Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and in it there's this place called Hyrule Castle Town. It's a small and simple area, especially by modern standards, but there's so much character and life to it. Even for N64 game, there are cool stores and side quests and just people hanging out having a good time and that music. It feels like a place full of life. One thing games like Dark Souls lack is this idea that there's even a world worth fighting for somewhere. The entire world of the games are empty nightmares populated only by the dying, the dead, the undead, the mad, the sad, the monstrous and Scottish people. Link is being told he's supposed to help Zelda save the world, and he is a world worth saving. Hyrule Castletown stuck with me, mainly because when you pull out the Master Sword and time advances and you go outside, mainly because when you and so you pile deal oh oh no I don't It's become this horrible place. Only three things in this era of gaming ever gave me genuine chills of fear. The terrifying wolf monster thing that attacks you out of nowhere in Castlevania 64, the landmine with eyes in Banjo-Kazooie, which legitimately scared me a lot as a kid, and coming out of the Temple of Time to discover that the lovely, Happy Town had been reduced to this. It shocked me tinny mind, seeing it just change like that. That ability to imbue a sense in a player about a place is really important, I think. Now, Bloodborne doesn't have a section where you see what the town was like when things were nice. But by starting just a little bit off kilter, just a little bit covered in monsters, you see that there is something worth saving in there, and as those things start to disappear and things take a Lovecraftian turn, there's the same sense, this. And I love Lovecraft. He was my favorite author when I was 14 until I noticed that no one was actually impressed when I would say sanguine instead of red. In retrospect, he's not as great a writer as I remember, and he's kind of on note, but his writing has inspired a wealth of fantastic designs and stories over the years that take liberties the way he did and maintain the same sense of terror at the unknown while having other less secretly super racist stuff in there, too. And Bloodborne is one of those fantastic stories. It has a sense of cosmic terror that only appears in the third act, but when it comes in a big way, making it super surprising and harder hitting than it would have been if it had started out that way or been super predictable about it. Oh, it's horrible. Birth imagery. I hate it. The world design is great as well. Okay, Dark Souls. Interconnected world. Lots of alternate paths and secret ways into other areas. It's great. But you know what sucks. Backtracking all the way across it again because you died and there's no bonfire anywhere near it. Too much time is spent walking back and forth through areas you already visited, and the world never really changes, so you re-seeing the same area over and over, except sometimes you re-seeing it backwards. I know the entirety of Dark Souls, world like the back of my hand. That's not because it's super memorable or interesting, but because I had to walk through all of it a lot to get to newer places or because I died again. Demon's Souls, in my opinion, was actually better. There's basically no backtracking. There's no interconnectedness either. Each archstone takes you to a different area, and you go in a linear path to the end and then leave. It doesn't have pretensions of being interconnected or one big world, and instead focuses on making levels that are interesting and engaging to play through the very first time. Demon's Souls is a little bit harder than Dark Souls because the creators of Dark Souls at some point realized that people would be fighting through each level several times forwards and backwards, and eventually people would just want to run past most of it to get where they were trying to go. So they designed areas where running away tended to work out pretty good. Demon's Souls is almost hard-coded to destroy you if you try that shit. But the trade-off is the encounter itself is more challenging and rewarding because it's designed to be approached once from one particular direction. I will take good level design over an open feeling world I'll have to backtrack through constantly every single time. The best areas in Dark Souls, Sen's Fortress and Anor Londo, don't really interconnect with anywhere, and instead they mostly a straight shot from where you start to meeting the boss. It's the best area precisely because, since the developers only intend for you to fight all the way through it once in one direction, it feeds you encounters precisely primed to challenge you in a specific way instead of having to be designed so you could come through in any direction to go somewhere else, which loosens what you can really do. Anor Londo feels a bit like a remake of some sections of the Bolitarian Palace, and I wish more sections were willing to be more linear and just be more interesting that first time. Fighting your way back out of Blighttown, or running all the way back through the door Havel's guarding just to get to the Darkroot Basin is annoying and just generally uninteresting. Especially when it's for the 8th time. I'm still in a dream. I'm still in Dark Soul. Darkroot Basin in general feels kind of dumb. Del fel Dio It's just a big area mostly empty of stuff to deal with some kind of simplistic enemies dropped there. If I wanted to have a bad time running through a mostly empty world, I would just play Monster Hunter. The Darkroot Basin also has the most dumb boss in the game who has two attacks they do over and over and which basically miss even if you're standing still. Bloodborne combines both of the best elements of each game. The best killed boy the barn the element Game Bill as woman down It's never got any areas that are too open and have nothing in them. Even areas taking place in the forest are dense with well-made and challenging encounters, and let's not forget actual traps that seem like they were laid out for a person. Jessus. No. No. Oh, I saw it just as I stepped on it. Backtracking is reduced because there are more lanterns, and while areas are interconnected, many sections are essentially straight shots to the next area with short side paths containing items. So you have a big open world that feels interconnected but surprising amounts of linearity. So you can have areas like this that only work if you reapproaching from one direction, so all these enemies are actually waiting and hiding for you and shoot at you. Coming back through this area would be weird, but you never have to think about that because you never have to. You can teleport around easily. There's quite a delicate sense of linearity and traveling across areas you've already visited because you have a key or some new thing has been unlocked by your actions, and thanks to a mechanic I'm going to call that night, where an actual story progresses as you kill bosses and the effects of your growing pool of insight too. Even pre-visited areas are a little bit different either visually or otherwise. Enemies change around, get glowy scary scythes and red versions of sticks, or just go to sleep. So the experience of going back through Cathedral Ward to go to a new area is valuable because it's a changing and you re-seeing things being different. You not just revisiting it or going through it again but backwards to get to the next new area. Okay, also co-op isn't garbage anymore. Trying to summon friends in these games has always been super annoying. You have to hope you're on the same server or the servers are even up anymore. You have to go human or consumer humanity and sit at the bonfire and go human and hope you see their summon sign and then maybe you all summon someone to help with Ornstein and Smig. But as you can tell from this footage it didn't work and I died on the way to summon Solaire and I didn't have any humanity left to try it again so I had to do it myself, and by do it myself I mean get fucked. Also being human makes it so you can be invaded by other players. You know what sucks? That becoming human, the thing you do if you need help with something you're having trouble with is also the thing that invites in more people to gank you to death. Like, no thanks. I can see the idea of it being cool and risk reward, but it's actually shit because it means you can be invaded before you even get to find someone you can summon, and if I'm summoning at all I'm already having trouble. Bloodborne co-op feels like it was actually made by people who assumed other people might want to use it. There's no human or inhuman state anymore. Instead, if you need a hand, you ring the please help me bell. Oh, in Britain we actually all given one of those at birth. And if someone else is ringing the help people bell they pulled in to give you a hand. It's simple and you don't have to mess about looking for signs anymore. Only after summoning can you get invaded so you have someone helping you with the area you're obviously finding difficult and the new person coming to get you at least definitely has to deal with two of you, which seems a bit more fair. And if you want to co-op with a specific person you can both enter a password of your choosing and go. Also, insight seems to be a less rare resource than all the others in previous games, so it's less likely you're gonna run out of your ability to ask for help, which is a really good idea. Oh, and since insight is tied to certain enemies getting harder, if you need a lot of help you lowering it so things will eventually let up. Not much, but it's nice. It's really nice. Also, the sound design. It's just brilliant. Everything. The monster howls. The trick weapons clicky-clacking into their alternate forms. The thunderous pounding of the machine gun. The squelching of the monsters getting slit up by me. The extra diegetic that plays when you parry someone successfully. The squeal of the tonitrus as it comes alive and thirsts for crime. It's all great. I hope the sound designers get to write a book about the work they did making this game feel so great. And in 10 years, once I know enough to Japanese to be able to comprehend basic sentences, I'll even be able to read it. The key thing that proves the power of the sound in this game is that these crow enemies are like regular-looking crows if a bit oversized. They attack by fluttering at you with their wings. But they do this when they attack you. These crows are a nightmare. They hide in just the right places and they make just a loud and horrifying enough noise that it never feels like they an easy enemy to deal with. They always just scary. They even come close to the fucking landmine. Fucking Jesus Christ. It's just great stuff. There's a section in Yahoo Gull where I just had to stop and listen. There's ominous, distant, pseudo-diegetic chanting, vague screams and cries in the distance. It's really quite something. I don't like describing games as atmospheric or dripping with atmosphere or anything like that. That feels kind of like a cop-out. But even attempting to describe the feeling of standing still in an area has caused me to slip into this really subdued tone. To me at least, that says something about the game's ability to communicate. It says something about the game's command and attitude. Also, because I am standing in an area where I just cleaned out a bunch of enemies, ghosts keep appearing and shooting in my direction because they're still fighting them, and I think that's kind of funny. Okay, finally, the big monster boss fights. Souls games are bad at these, in me opinion. I get it. A lot of people like the Gaping Dragon and think he's cool and there's re-interesting looking. But in me opinion, they re not that great to fight, which is the important bit. I've often referred to as the dudes in armor argument, that Souls games feature too many enemies that are just dudes in armor. But in fights, monsters and the big, cool, weird enemies don't react in a manner that makes sense to me as a player. Human enemies respond when you hit them with your sword, but Sif, for example, doesn't seem to even flinch most of the time. Even the final boss flinches when you hit him, so you at least know it's working. I am making some of the mightiest swings you can possibly imagine right now using me character, who incidentally I named Brexit, and she's like, whatever. I'm gonna continue moving like it's a normal thing. No selling all my best moves, just like all the other women in me life. Just like all the other women. Even Sif is negging me, and suddenly she's limping. I mean, oh, it's so sad. Oh, it's a sad dog. It's. But where was this kind of reacting before? And you can't parry monstery enemies of any kind either. It took me major trial and error for me to even determine if you could parry the snake men in Sen's Fortress. By the way, the answer is yes, but only some attacks. The Dark Souls wiki even has an extensive list of what creatures you actually can parry and what attacks you can parry. I get that not everything you're fighting is technically humanoid or has a weapon that you can parry in a traditional sense, but it still feels really lacking in my opinion that you can't use one of the most interesting mechanics in the game against, like, half the enemies. You can kind of parry monsters' attacks. It causes them to do a bit less damage, but seriously, what the fuck? If you have a pseudo parry mechanic, just let me fucking parry this guy. Jessus. The timing is often incredibly hard. Like, literally harder than putting your shield up or dodging, and all it does is cause you to take reduced damage. Like what? Bloodborne finally sorts that shit out. It makes monstrous enemies react better to being attacked, even bosses, where you can suddenly do cool things like break individual limbs. when you finally toppled Dark Beast Paul to the ground because you knocked him so completely off balance, there's a real sense that you gained an upper hand and rattled his bones. On top of that, you can now parry most of these enemies. Even bosses can often be parried. That's what let me finally beat the blood-starved beast after an embarrassing amount of attempts. I personally never got bored with dudes in armor. That was just the most fun type of fight in the Souls series thus far. It wasn't broken, but Bloodborne fixed it by coming up with many different kinds of monster, but making the fights feel super responsive to your actions within them. I haven't played Dark Souls 3 yet because I wanted to make this video first, but I hope that if it does have more monstery type enemies, it has this kind of responsiveness also. I would honestly prefer to have even more dudes in armor than bad dogs or bad rats. Oh no, not that. No. Okay, also, the Blood Veils is just a great healing system. Or just all the way through. I talked before about how the Estus flask is really good because it's an infinite source of health, but the trade-off there aren't any items you can then also use for healing. You just have that finite resource. What I quite like about Bloodborne's system is you have a lot of healing items, but they refinite. You have enough that it's not ever a huge problem, but you can theoretically run out. So it becomes more but you always have enough veils to get your health back almost all the way after an encounter so you can keep going. But on top of that, you are really likely to pick blood veils up as you go in fights with people. For example, in this section, I lose a ton of health, but I get all the veils back as a result of the fight, so it feels balanced. And since they don't always drop, I am eventually supposed to get better. I don't, but still. One issue in Demon's Souls that kind of made it broken was you could, at a certain point, buy 100 of the best healing item and just carry them around and basically be invincible. Which I mean is maybe a problem if a game is supposed to be challenging. Bloodborne kind of fixes it by giving you a really good healing item and giving you quite a lot, but having an upper limit on how many you could ever possibly have. So I feel like Bloodborne might have perfected the system by giving you a lot of a finite amount of thing. However, it is possible to run out and have to farm for them, which isn't so great. In my opinion, they could have had it so you always start with 20 or even 10 blood veils and continue to pick them up the way you do now. But that would completely take away the idea of being able to stock up on them and use them like a regular item and sell them and stuff, so maybe there's a reason why they didn't do that. I mean, maybe the game designers did stuff on purpose. I don't know. Blood veils also heal a set percentage of your maximum health, so they are always a useful source of healing, unlike, for example, the crescent moongrass, which is just piss. Also, you heal a lot faster. In previous games, they wanted healing to be like this risk-reward thing where you stop, so if you want to heal, you're taking a huge risk in leaving yourself open. But it seems like they settled in Bloodborne of having it be a really quick thing you can do almost any time and just forgiving you for that. And that's okay. Maybe it theoretically makes it less challenging in some ways, but it's worth it because it means you don't die while healing, and that just feels bad, even if it's your fault. But since they took that out, now you only ever die because you failed to dodge or because you were attacking when you shouldn't have done. And that, I think, feels a lot better. There are still some criticisms I have of Bloodborne, though, where it falls short or seems to take a step back. Here's a kind of big thing. I'm a little disappointed by the encounters. The imps in Souls games have about as much health as you, or at least an amount that seems fair. However, they can do things like heal. It's fun and cool, and there's back and forth, and it's just always neat. I like the garden leading up to the Sith boss fight quite a lot just because of all the cool, unique that come to wreck your shit, including man with inferior jump attack. All there. An idiot who forgot that arrows move in slow motion in Dark Souls land. And, oh, whoa, Patrick Klepek's Demon's Souls character is here, too. And if you really like fighting characters with similar abilities to you, there's a cat who wants to help you protect the garden from other real human players. If you join their covenant and wear their ring, occasionally you get summoned in as a blue phantom. So yes, you can get backstabbed from 10 feet away and wonder if you will ever fucking work in these games. In Bloodborne, stray hunters and hunter-sized bosses have obscene amounts of health. This puts you at a massive disadvantage and does away with the feeling that you re-fighting an equal and instead fighting a boss version that doesn't really play by the same rules as you. Stop shooting. Oh my god. None of them can heal like you can, which kind of balances it out, but it doesn't feel right. Actually, no, some of them do heal and they get back a ton of health, and it's kind of messed up. I know it's possible to get in and make sure they don't, and it's more challenging for them to have more health, but it's not challenging in a way that's fun. It feels off. In my opinion, these fights would be better served if they had an equivalent amount of health as you but could get their health back from rallying like you and would heal themselves in a pinch. They'd be more interesting back and forth like in the previous games, and it wouldn't feel so much like a long, dual slog every time you refight them, getting them slowly back down to that last sliver before they suddenly shoot you dead instantly again. Great, now I have to come back and pick away at his health and hope he doesn't insta-kill me again. Bloodborne. Bloodborne. More like blood, snorn. Gah. You can fucking hit me out of me combo while I'm hitting you. That is a fucked up thing to put in a game. That's fucked up, right? Also, they have seemingly infinite ammo, which is just rude. Weirdly enough, invasions by other players show off me version of this mechanic perfectly. I got invaded exactly once in me first playthrough, and it was exhilarating. And it is easy the play and we both came close toadying multiple times and made spaces to heal as we continued to fight. Healing is super quick, but the developers were smart enough to make this parryable. That's how we won in the end. I kind of wish I'd been invaded more, and that's not really something I say often about the Souls series. Maybe I'm just being a big whinny baby here, or maybe that one invasion was so fun it's forced me to wish there were more fights like that in the game itself. But I think an improvement I'd like to see in a theoretical Bloodborne 2 would be more enemies that resemble that kind of encounter. I want the sense that the other hunters got where they did by being exceptionally skilled with the same assets as not because they inexplicably had many times more health and infinite ammo. Oh, but because of these dead, stop it. But because of these dead, ha 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 ha. I also think the Blood Veil system, while good and fun, has the inherent downsides of if you run out, you can't easily buy more because they re just a bit too expensive per veil, and if you re in an area or boss that kills you a lot, you re not going to be recovering them from enemies, so you inevitably have to go farm veils or the souls to buy them, And that just not great when it happens. There's also some incredibly weird bits where enemies aren't designed for the areas you find them in, like some of the bosses or the giants in Cathedral Ward. I'd like you to tell me what even hit me there, and why do you have to go back to the central hub every time you want to go somewhere? That's kind of annoying. These are all relatively small problems in the grand scheme. My main problem with the game is also the best demonstration of why the rest of Bloodborne is so good. The Chalice dungeons. Oh me god. They are a completely optional part of the game where you can go into dungeons and traverse them, fighting more bosses and enemies, and some of them are randomly generated, meaning there is theoretically infinite content in Bloodborne. But I am going to be honest, they really bad. By stripping out the part where the levels are carefully designed to be fun and good and interesting and challenge you in a fair and reactive way, the dungeon segments can be teeth-grindingly bad in ways that simply aren't. Where the only when the land you could I we I am really Accidentally, they re-object lessons in why we still have level designers and don't just have a computer churn out all our levels. The Chalice dungeons are so lazily put together that this guy, who spawns in like all of the important rooms in any given dungeon, like one of the bosses in the dungeons is just 3 of him. So on some floors, you beat one of these guys, hit the switch that unlocks the boss door, and then you fight 3 more of him, and you like what? You know, I've heard criticisms that some enemies in the Souls series start to get repetitive, but honestly, they don't even come close to this, where you literally just fighting the same guy over and over in different permutations. I'm not covering the Chalice dungeons in very much detail here because I feel like I've talked about Bloodborne enough at this point. So it's not really going to hammer home how just bad this is. Like this room you re-seeing right now, you will see this room copied over and over for hours. That is all the Chalice dungeons are. There were like 5, 6 different kinds of room repeated over and over. Honestly, watch this part of the video on a loop for like 2.5 hours and you will have a full replication of about as much of the Chalice dungeon as I can stand to record to make this video. Even the pre-made dungeons are just the same kind of rooms in different configurations over and over. Oh, Jory, Mary, or be show you, kosher, be show you, good. It's not great. You know what it reminded me of? Kingsfield. And no game should be like Kingsfield. Oh, hey, look. It's another one of those. I'm so fucking surprised. They also reveal how good the rest of the game is by showing how much care and attention must have gone into making all the areas and encounters look and feel as good as they do. And they do that by showing how lacking the game would have been if they had been there. He Harnum does the impossible by feeling varied and huge and complex while being primarily focused on one big kind of similar-looking town made of very similar kinds of architecture throughout. The Chalice dungeons remind me of the parts of dungeon crawlers that don't hold up to scrutiny either. They almost literally just box rooms with grimy stone textures thrown up everywhere. If Bloodborne were released as a roguelike that used this randomly generated stuff, or if the whole game looked and felt like the Chalice dungeons, I think I would hate it. There's this game called Necropolis. It's billed as a Dark Souls roguelike. It's kind of boring. The enemies are repetitive. There's no boss fights. Even quick attacks feel slow like in Lords of the Fallen. And more importantly, the lack of design in any of the levels or environments means there's no character or feel to the world. It's the Chalice dungeons, but without the upshot of being attached to an actually good game. I guess what I am saying is I like games when they designed by people. Weirdly enough, while some of the new bosses that only appear in the Chalice dungeons are repeated a lot across them and clearly didn't have much time or effort put into them and done to strike me as particularly interesting in and of themselves, several of them are super fun to actually fight once you get to them. It's almost a shame that the content you have to pass through to get to them are kind of boring or actively unfun because they worthy encounters. I almost wonder if all the bosses you encounter here are the ones they made and weren't happy with, so they didn't bother putting them in the main game, which naturally means the best ones here are the ones that feel the most like they should have been after all. Look at that. There's a boss from earlier in the regular dungeons just walking around, and he's surrounded by two other bosses from earlier in this dungeon, and they kill him for what? The Chalice dungeons make a lot of points for me about the importance of level design and execution in these games and show how the base mechanics alone wouldn't be enough for an engaging and fun experience. You need the push and pull of a designer hiding enemies in just the right places, scaling the difficulty of encounters through careful development of enemy placement and so on. Oh, I fucking see you, mate. Yeah, I've played a video game before. You re not weird, are you? Welcome to Dark Souls. That's the first trick they pull in all those games. Yep, you got me the first time through. This is a true Souls game. Don't even bother looking at what I picked up. The real victory was, oh, Jess's. I was feeling so full of myself then and, like, another gunk came. Holy shit. This game's amazing. If you like walking from box room to box room full just of a bunch of random enemies plopped in there and oh, look, it's another one of those, then I guess the Chalice Dungeons are for you. If you like the Chalice Dungeons and the randomness, I can see an appeal to that, but let's admit that the actual game is more fun, and if that, for you, is a contentious point, then I'm sorry, but you err beneath me. Here's the part where I wrap up and give some pithy comments about how developers have things to learn from Bloodborne, but do they? Not every game has to learn something from Bloodborne. Not every game is attempting such a sharp, crackling deliberateness, such a test of perception and prediction over raw mechanical input or simpler sorts of puzzle, or such a specific sense of uncertainty and esoteric horror. While many designers might well recognize in Bloodborne a method they could get across their own intended reaction better, a way of helping players to get the best experience from their work by altering the attitude with which they perceive it, an equal, if not larger amount, should strive to learn absolutely nothing. Gamers everywhere have already had years of laughing and attempts to commodify their enjoyment of the Souls series. The endless descriptions of new games with it's like Dark Souls, but with E. The sad truth is, the most common reason the Souls games didn't have E is because they would have been the worst for it. You know, I thought I wanted a roguelike that was a bit like Dark Souls, but then when I actually got it, I realized there was a reason why they didn't make one of those in the first place. More importantly is the wider critical and cultural overreaction to the series and its popularity. While lots of folks have always been super positive about the series, even since Demon's Souls, its spiritual successor becoming a genuine smash hit with a huge players has caused lots of games writers to kind of go into overdrive about the series. I can already predict one comment someone paused this video halfway through to leave. Why did you bring up Thumper right in the middle of this? Thumper's or Hythm game. What does it have to do with bloody action, adventure, or things like the Souls games? Well, apart from the general point made about how games can engross you, you rewrite. It doesn't really have much in common with the Souls series. The main reason I brought it up was because when I was reading reviews of Thumper to see what people thought about it, I found a review that called it the Dark Souls of Rohithm games. I could say that calling something the Dark Souls of something, or saying something is like Dark Souls for the sake of comparison and easy clicks is just poor and cliché writing, and it kind of is. But it's more that we as critics have a duty to communicate why something is good. Thumper has done a disservice by being described as the Dark Souls of Rohithm games because it indicates that we still don't have the language to really explain why something is good without having to compare it to a singular experience that isn't really all that much like it when you really get down to it. I remember Yahtzee's Dark Souls review. In it he makes this point. So I'd ask them to explain why it's good, and they'd reply, "Oh, we can't tell you. You just have to find out for yourself." And then I'd say, "Shut up or fuck off," ideally both in either order. He kind of skips over it for a joke, but what he's doing here is actually describing the problem. We as a community are sometimes unable to really come up with why we think something is good or we enjoy it, and it leaves us having to vaguely gesture in a game's direction because words have failed us. It's a hard series to pin down. I know, trust me. I've just spent a really long time trying to do so because when we grapple with why we enjoy something, we ultimately interrogating our own feelings, and that's a very difficult thing to do indeed. At least I assume that's why my therapist charges so much. But good criticism means good discourse. I can completely see why writers, critics, and journalists use the shorthand they do. But I think the onus is on us to try not to be willing to be long, complicated, willing to be even a little bit boring or pedantic at times in order to explore the qualities of gaming experiences in a truly valuable way, which I hope I've done. But knowing me, I probably, didn't. For things to fully get judged on their own merit, we have to start examining the actual merits in concrete terms. For the record, the most accurate comparison I've seen is when Patrick Klepek described beating a Mario Maker level as like the feeling of beating a Dark Souls boss. The point is the level achieved a feeling rather than having any pure mechanical similarity. I mean, they re completely different genres. It's hard to do that comparison right, but Scoops managed it. A hard thing to do that only a few people achieve. I guess that makes Patrick Klepek the Dark Souls of game critic. Bloodborne, a game about injecting yourself with increasing amounts of dangerous liquid, is itself the ultimate gateway drug. The precise beauty of the particulars of the experience make for a fantastic thing all on its own. But perhaps more importantly than being one of the best games of its generation, it inoculates its players against the problems the Souls series has previously been unable to rid itself for years. The previous games were really good, but their design accidentally necessitated ways of playing it that were conservative and just not all that fun to actually do. It was, to coin yet another unfitting food metaphor, being handed a very good bowl of soup, shout out to soup, but being given a shield-shaped pitchfork to eat it with. It took a lot of time to realize there were more funner ways of doing it than it presented itself, and by then people had lost their appetite. Bloodborne is better soup, but more importantly, it's a soup that comes with a piece of paper that says, "Hey, don't use the shield. Just find a spoon or some bread or just pour me directly into your mouth." Also, the bowl somehow also contains a theoretical infinite amount of bad soup that tastes awful, but it's cordoned off from the good parts of the soup and completely optional to consume. Okay, I probably should have written a conclusion out. This isn't doing very good. What ways do I expect the series to be improved on in the future? Well, I'm honestly daunted by the genius of the From Software team, so I really can't wait to be surprised by how they improve on it in the future. At the very least, though, I do hope that Bloodborne 2 comes with complimentary breadsticks. I can't end the video like that. I can't. I can't. I'd like to say a very special thanks to I will say a very special Casey Schneebel, Kieran Corwin, Light Williams, David Callan, David Rosett, Costigan, Eric Hunter, Findlay Bowick, Copley, Graff, and Blackpool, Haror, Jack, Harvey, Jack, Rian, Jan, Anders, Jess, and Walter J. Logan, Jeffrey Ladd, Jeffrey Theobald, Joy New York, John Cantwell, Joseph Greco. That's right. I got it right this time. I want to take me time with it. So I want to make at least one more long video in this style about something else first. If you think about it, it took me 8 years to make the Fallout 3 video, and as of November 10th, Fallout 4 has only been out for 1. So give me a little bit, you know. The best part about this video being over is I still haven't played Dark Souls 3 or the Dulk for Bloodborne because I've been too busy making this video since, like, July. This video was supposed to originally come out in October as, like, a Halloween special, but I missed that. So, like, I can finally play video games again. People who back me get access to bonus videos and also a recorded, like 24 hours of footage of me playing Bloodborne with a friend that I'm going to put out there. So there's that. But also a pretty elaborate sketch for this video that I decided to take out because I realized it was just complete nonsense. So that stuff's going to be going up soon. I really want to put out a bunch of bonus videos. I've been kind of putting off working on them to get this video out at all ever. So I feel really bad about that. So I'm going to put a whole bunch of those things out as soon as I can. So bear with me. Whoa, you sat through all of those. That's very nice of you. If you backed me, I certainly hope I managed to get your name in there. I always worry if I somehow miss names, even though I literally just copy and pasted it from a list. If I've made a huge mistake, let me know. But as a present for the nice folks who bothered to sit through the credits of all the people who allowed me to keep making this stuff, I'd like to just throw some game names out there. Shadow of Mordor Deuce Ex-Human Revolution, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Feel free to write one of those names in a comment on this video and see what it causes to happen.